1 2 It's your boy Abdul-Salaam, aka Brother Jabril. This is Exposure, headed into our 13th year now of Exposure, and our first show, October 26th in Houston, Texas, with the one and only Ethan Klein.
Howdy, sir.
It's great to have you, man. Ethan,
Thanks, man.
if those of you guys who don't know, which you've probably been hiding under a rock, Ethan has been an important part, a huge part of the underground electronic music scene in Houston for at least decades. I've had a relationship with Ethan as a friend for, I'd say, at least 20 years.
Absolutely.
And he used to run with the infamous Scooby Doo crew, throwing parties and having a great time. And
Yeah.
Ethan has been one of those people in the Houston area who has really gone even beyond the confines of Houston to represent Houston in places like Detroit Electronic Music Festival, amongst others. So I'm really excited to get into this with my man,
Thank
Ethan.
you.
We're glad to have you, and welcome to the show, my man.
It's a pleasure. It's an honor. You and I have known each other for a long time. We've always had a lot of fun, and I appreciate you having me, you
Yeah,
and Greg having me, and I'm so looking forward to playing for you guys on in October later this month.
yeah, for sure. I like I really like your story. It's very similar to a lot of ours, where we have a great deal of passion for the music that we play, but we also understand that we have to kind of find avenues to fund this passion that we have, right? Instead
Yeah.
of living that life of, like, sleep until 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the morning, and maybe even later, and just living off the money that is afforded us in underground music. So
Right.
um,
It
so he
was
got me on that.
easier. It was easier about 15, 20 years ago to live off DJing, but it's impossible nowadays.
Oh man, I can't
Unless you
can't even imagine.
unless you're, you know,
Yeah, I was telling somebody the other day.
pre-recording.
I remember when I was paying $600 a month for a
Uh-huh.
studio apartment in the Montrose,
Yeah.
right? Which people are like, $600 in a month.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, I lived by myself. I didn't even have roommates. It
Yeah.
was just me. And
Yeah.
it was a little bitty efficiency apartment, but I still
Yeah.
got to
I
do it. That was
yeah. I moved when I got back from Arizona. I lived in Arizona from 94 to 96. And my first apartment was on Montrose and like close to Bissonnette, 425. And it was a nice one bedroom. I'm like, oh my gosh.
that's
So
incredible.
yeah, it was yeah,
So
425.
why don't you give our audience a brief origin story of Super Ethan Klein?
Well, I guess, my, and the way I kind of got into DJing and this kind of music was really my parents. My Both my parents were kind of hippies in New York, and my mom's Puerto Rican, my dad's Israeli, and they, they were really into music. And so growing up in the household, there was always music being played. Everything from like Julio Iglesias to Earth, Wind and Fire to the Beatles to Creedence. Some African bands like Awatunji, who I freaking love, um, and Stevie Wonder. And what I did, I'd play the records and listen to it front to back, and then I'm like, I wonder if there's a way to kind of make mixtapes of it, right? Of my favorite songs. Um and I remember going into a Radio Shack, remembering like, oh, that's how I can mix the two. And the brand was called Atis. And I was like 13 years old, maybe 12, 13. I got it for Christmas. I had one turntable that was belt drive, and the other one was um, one just belt drive, and then a tape deck. So I'd kind of just go back and forth and just make tapes, and then finally got another belt drive and would mix it without really beat matching, just kind of fade in and out. Um, and I had a couple of friends that were like, "Oh, okay, cool. Well, let's save up money to buy a turntable that has like pitch control. That's a direct drive." So we spent, $80 on it was a Technique, but it was a digital like pitch up, pitch down. And so you would only mix one way, right? Because you had the
Right.
belt drive on one side and then you had the direct drive on the other. And it was kind of cool. And so, mixing a little funk, a little bit of, I was never into disco. I can't stand disco, and I don't know why. It's a weird thing. I'll talk about that later. And a lot of like industrial synth pop, Italio, um, more of the kind of gritty. And we were going to record stores in the Montrose area, because they were like, so by this time I'm like 14 and they're 16. So they're driving, and we'd go to Record Rack, New Beat, Sound Exchange, and just kind of dig. And we'd go on, Saturday mornings or right after school on Friday, and because neighborhood kids, and so it was fun. We, you know, I loved it. It was such a adventure to, listen, I'd listen on the radio to what is it called? It was Club 6400. And so they'd play 80s, but also they were playing some like little labels out of Germany and Belgium, kind of new beat type of stuff. And I thought, oh, that's like the industrial stuff is really, really cool. But when I started digging, like at the record stores, I was picking up, which I didn't know. I thought it was just kind of cool stuff. It was house. And not until probably like 10 years later did I realize, oh shit, I'm playing, you know, Eddie Fowlkes, and I'm playing Model 500, playing, Frankie Knuckles, or, Jamie Principle, a lot of the Chicago and Detroit guys, some of the, David Morales, Jelly Bean Benendez, yeah, Jelly
Benitez.
Bean. And I'm just like, some acid stuff and, acid house, which I'm a huge fan. So that's how it kind of started. My first real gig was, I think 1980, like 89. It was a house party. I had custom cabinets for like speakers, and brought my, by this time I had 1200s and a mixer, and I think they paid me like $200 or $100. Yeah, for to bring everything up, and then I started do it for the schools, like for private parties, like house parties. And
Right.
so that's when I was into like hip house.
Right.
So I was digging that. Yeah.
So what year was that? Would you say?
Probably 89.
89.
Yeah.
Nice.
And acid house, like some acid house and like hip house and some industrial and some 80s stuff. And then my first kind of break was in 92 after I graduated high school. I did a club called Chameleon, where El Big Bad is now, and it was Cabo back then, and before then it was Chameleon
There
or
was some
Afterlife.
there was some rave parties there too, way back in the days.
There were,
Yeah.
yeah, it was a place called Afterlife,
Right.
and then Bluefish or Blowfish, and then but first it was funny because it was during the week it was a black gay club,
Hmm.
down like a down low black gay club.
Right.
And on the weekends, Friday and Saturday, it was house, funk, disco, industrial, like more. And that's how it kind of started. And then, um, yeah, so that's how it kind of started.
I think it's funny how some of those kind of the like we had a connection through the Orbit Room, which was also
Right.
a black gay club.
On down low.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Incognito. It was actually called
Incognito.
Incognito.
Yeah, that's right. It was called Incognito. Yeah.
There's another name that the black scene kind of affectionately
Yeah.
called it,
Yeah.
but it was it's just cool, like that vein that
Yeah.
connects us is like, the way the music was made,
Uh-huh.
the people that were gathering for that music, and it seems to kind of have that. Definitely had that connection in Houston, which is pretty
Right.
cool. Um,
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah.
how did you? So, what was your first rave party? What was the first rave party like?
That I played at,
Yeah.
I think it was 92, 92, 93, and it was called The Gathering.
Hmm.
It was thrown by God, I'll never forget, 626 Productions, which was a guy named Mike Pierce and Mark from Scooby Doo Crew and a
Okay.
guy
Yeah.
named Joe. And it was actually kind of the first rave in Houston, excuse me, that was over 1,000 people. Because Matrix and Green Crayon, they were throwing, these underground raves, and they were getting quite, they're getting the 400 or 500 people, I think 800. But I remember this was a little, and we kind of got some shit because these guys were, at the time, it was more about a money making for them. But for me,
Right.
it was like, shh, I get to play on a big old sound system. It's like, I didn't care. Um, and they paid well, and you know, getting out there playing a huge, I forgot where I think it was at a place called the Ensemble, and the Ensemble's still there downtown,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
the Midtown area. Yeah.
Yeah. They do a bunch of plays there.
Yeah, exactly. So that was my first one. And after that, it just kind of, so I was here from 92 to 94.
Right.
And then I moved to Arizona for school. And then I met up with a guy named DJ Emil, who is he was very instrumental in kind of teaching me kind of what a rave scene kind of looked like, and underground scene. He was part of, I don't know if you remember, Bomb Shelter Crew, Z Trip, and Radar.
Sure. Yeah. Heck yeah.
Yes, so it was those three guys. He would do like really sick like electro and break beats, and we would kind of took me under his wing a little bit, and we I became kind of a resident like once a month at a place called Chupa, which means
Yeah.
suck,
Yeah.
which is cool. And it was a
Is this another
dingy,
gay club, sir?
no, it was a dingy warehouse that was probably like 2,000 square feet, just cool. And this is when I started meeting like DJ Dan, because they're on the West Coast. I played with
Right.
Dimitri from D-Light,
Yeah.
but I saw, so just that's where I started, and go to like really cool events. So just kind of like that, getting more of that West Coast vibe, which was
Right.
really, really cool. So yeah. And then in 96, I came back to Houston.
I always like to ask people what it is that motivates them. So by that, ask them to finish the sentence. I DJ because. What about you, Ethan Klein? What is the thing that motivates you? Why do you DJ? How do you finish
I,
the sentence? I DJ because.
I love the reciprocity. I love the I give you, you give me. Like it's communication. It's I'm gonna give you what I've got. Like I'm telling you a story through my music, through the music that I'm playing, and I want, so for me, I love reciprocity. It's like, let's play together, right? Let me, and it's a form of connection, right? It's connection and attachment, and it's a way to kind of express yourself without using words, which I
Yeah.
think is the coolest, you know, um, back then, when you were buying records, you know, on a good day at the record store, you might walk out with two or three, right?
Right. Oh,
And
yeah.
on a good day, and that's a really damn good day.
Right.
Now there's so much music, which is great because now you can be even choosy, even
Oh
pickier
yeah.
and really kind of hone in on a sound. But back then, it's like for you to play a track, it had to have meant something, right? You remember the cover. You might not know who. You remember the label. Like there's an attachment to the record. The physical, the touch. Yeah. So going back to it's, I definitely feel it's that reciprocity. I DJ because of the reciprocity. You know, Reciprocal,
Yeah.
the back and forth between the
Talk.
dancers and the therapists.
Yeah,
Therapist,
exactly.
sorry, the DJ.
Well, what I was trying to kind of formulate here in my head was that you're in a position of service for a living, right? But at the same
Yeah,
time, you also have this kind of this feeling of this duty to provide some sort of entertainment for the people that come out to see you,
right.
and so you feel like it sounds like you're into just like the reciprocity, the process of like saying this is what I have for you. You enjoy it,
Right.
yes, and then like people start dancing and
Yeah.
etc. And you're of service in that way. I feel like I've been put on this earth as well
Yeah.
to be of service, and
Yeah.
I guess why I've had the careers that I've had. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
several
No,
of them,
absolutely.
all of them in that same vein. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you think of everything, every job is a service, right?
Yeah.
But I think because this is, I don't care. I think DJing is an art.
Yeah.
And this is, I'm expressing, because I have a choice what I'm going to put through those speakers, right?
Yeah.
What I put out. So it is vulnerable. It is, I don't care if you look at me or not. It's
Right.
what I'm putting out that I'm wanting to share with you. And so that's what I love so much about it.
Yeah.
It's expression.
We also love the music, right? Like we wouldn't
Oh,
be
yeah.
we wouldn't
No.
be doing this if we didn't love
No.
what
Yeah.
it is. And you could turn this into a job really easy. You can really turn it into a full-time career where you're, playing all the top 40 clubs and doing all the it's just
Soulless.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with anybody who wants to do that for a living. I mean, it's
Yeah.
but at the same time like it's not the same type of artistry. I don't believe when you're just
Well,
putting
if
things
if
in.
well, if you're playing top 40, if you're playing pop and you genuinely enjoy doing it and you enjoy the music and you're doing it because you have a passion for it, what's different than me playing deep underground house? There
Yeah.
isn't, because the feeling is still the same.
Hmm.
You see what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Even though so I think
I do think
art
that
is
there.
art is subjective.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah, 100%. It
Yeah.
definitely is. But my whole thing about it is that when you're doing something that is, when you're playing music that's popular and
Mhm.
it's not really challenging people. Okay, I know what this could really easily get into like
Oh yeah.
a philosophical argument, right?
Right. I
But
mean,
like for me, I feel like music is so much more important than just like I still have emotional moments when I listen to music. You know,
absolutely. Oh, without a doubt.
I heard something a while back that was put out in 2003 that I
Mhm.
completely missed,
Ah,
and I can't get enough of that song.
all right. Oh,
And
what song is it? Now I'm curious.
it's a song by a guy named Shino Black, and the song is
Uh-huh.
called "Kept."
Uh-huh.
And it's the original mix, and it's beautiful. It's absolutely
Really?
beautiful, soulful, a little gospely. Of course,
Uh-huh.
it wouldn't be something I play if it
Oh
wasn't
yeah.
gospely.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful song that I heard at the ATL Weekender out here,
Oh, nice.
and yeah, I was taken by it. But I don't also want to get into this elitist like because don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
like when I'm driving the car I'll turn on some rap music or
Sure. Yeah.
popular music,
Yeah.
R&B. I love new R&B, That's
Yeah.
like my shit right now is
Like
listening to
neo
more
soul.
neo soul, as well
Uh,
as like
yeah.
contemporary and popular R&B.
Yeah.
SZA,
Yeah.
Frank Ocean,
Oh,
stuff like that.
I love Frank Ocean.
Yeah,
He does some wicked beats too. I
yeah, for
love
sure.
his beats. Yeah.
So yeah, who would you say supported you the most through your musical journey?
You know, my parents put up with that boom, boom, boom for a very long time. And
Right.
they never like discouraged me. Right. They came to a few events at the Orbit Room, which was kind of cool to watch me play. They tolerated very loud music that was, so they every once in a while they say, "Hey, do you mind turning it down a little bit?" But they were very kind of supportive in that sense. I lo- you know, I learned um I learned how to kind of beat match. And one of my friends is like, "Are you counting BPMs?" I'm like, what's that? You know, but I would, honestly, the guys, I would have to say, kind of the people that really pushed and like I felt kind of nurtured. I'd have to say, it's Kelly, Don, Mark, SDC. They, I felt that they really, um, they pushed, right? They had an idea, they had an agenda. And you know because I was doing the booking for Scooby-Doo crew, and I'm like, "Hey, look." So if I'm like, oh God, worst. I think it was Juan Atkins, Stacy Pullen, because I was a huge Detroit fan.
Right.
Juan Atkins, Stacy Pullen were in the main room, and in the back, I think it was like mathematics, or not math. They got some guys from California, like hip hop, like beat juggles, not beat junkies, but along those lines.
Right.
And you know, we probably had 100 people. I mean, we lost our ass. They
Right.
lost their. I mean, but I
Right.
did the booking, right? And
Comes some responsibility with that.
right. And I didn't put the money, but they supported it, right? They
Right.
supported pushing boundaries.
Hmm.
You know, so, they took chances. If I said, "Hey, I think this could draw," this person would draw. Sometimes, they took chances on that and really kind of supported and kind of nurtured um, the movement and the push. And it gave me an avenue to kind of push what I liked, which was house and techno, so I really, for how long we were doing events, I really felt like they were super, super supportive. And we had, it was smooth for the most part.
You know
It
what I loved
was,
about SDC and
yeah,
their productions was you would get these flyers, right? Like
right.
this, uh, from any rave, right? And it
Yeah.
was like, oh, it's this theme in the flyer, and you get there, and it's just like a stage, a couple
Right.
turntables,
Yeah.
some
Basic.
lighting maybe,
Yeah.
and and that's
Yeah.
fine. You got to do
Yeah.
things grassroots, but the SDC parties that I ever went to that were always experiential. I
Yeah.
remember Shangri-La, like one of the Shangri-La
Oof.
parties I went to, and
Yeah.
there was somebody up, like it seemed
Yeah.
like they were like 30 feet in the air with these
Yeah.
like
A spider,
arms.
kind of in the
Yeah.
spider web.
It's
Yeah.
like it was a Hindu goddess kind of,
Yeah.
with the multiple arms, Ganesha or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And it was just cool.
No, it was Doc Martin, Eddie Amador, I think DJ 3. I'd have to look. I forgot that was a party that was a party that Kelly that was kind of a passion. Like, this is what I
Right.
want.
Why don't you share some of your memory, like some of the most memorable moments that you.
Okay. Number one is definitely Detroit Electronic Music Festival. in
Yeah.
2002.
How did that come about?
So Levon Lewis from Lunatex, him and we lived together for a little bit, and he had a studio, and we were kind of messing around with stuff, and we made two tracks, two pretty decent tracks, and by this time Eddie and I started to become kind of friends, and I booked Eddie folks a couple of times here in Houston, and I sent him the DAT, and he's like, "Yeah, I want it. I want the two tracks." I'm like, "Right on." So he did it. He took it on his label. He printed out about 100 white labels, but he was in the middle of a move from Detroit to Vegas. So they never really came, it never came out under City Boy. It just came out as a white label.
Right.
And so there's like 100 of these things out there. And so we kept in touch, and he's like, so after Carl Craig um, got let go by the city of Detroit, what they decided to do was have a committee of 8 people, 8 DJ producers. And in order to be able to play in 2002, you had to be picked, and it had to be a unanimous decision. So it was like DJ Bone, Eddie Fowlkes, Kevin Saunderson, um, K Hand, and a few other people. And
Rest in
so
peace.
huh?
Rest in peace, right?
Rest in peace, absolutely.
K Hand.
Yeah, she has, and she is the sweetest. She was the sweetest woman. I mean, she was so sweet. And they like Eddie said, "Hey, I'd like this guy to play," and they're like, "Who?" And DJ Bone knew who I was, and maybe one or two. Kevin did, Saunderson, and so I got a unanimous decision to play, and it was just, I was like, what?
That's
And
amazing.
it was cool. And I had the sunset spot on the second large stage, and just in front of me was 60,000 people. And it was the most, and I'm playing at the same time as P-Funk, like P-Funk's in the other stage. I got to ride the bus from the airport to the hotel with Parliament,
That's
Funkadelic,
amazing.
and talk to them, and they were the coolest guys. Yeah. So that whole weekend experience was just like beautiful. It was a beautiful, beautiful night and day. And
That's
yeah, and just
amazing.
it was such an honor. It was just such an honor to do that. So, and after that, that's kind of when I decided, okay, I hit my goals. It can't get better. Yeah.
That was your peak.
That was my peak. I have to agree. That was my peak.
Nah,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
You've done a lot of great things. Actually, you just had a release in March, right? And you've got another one coming out soon.
Yeah. So Housetown Records, cellos label,
Shout
Ray
out
Rendon.
Cello.
Yeah, good dude. And him and I would do Escape Control every Wednesdays, if you remember that, at
Oh,
Cardi's.
Cardi's, yeah.
Yeah. And then it moved to the Wax. So him and I would do that. And we became really good friends. And he started a label, and I think Jake Childs helped him out with it. Uh, and uh, we had a track with Vic Vegas and Bristle, Joel and Adrian, and
Shout out. Shout out
yeah,
Jake Childs. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And then I produced again with a guy named Sakuraba, who is a musician here in Houston. And I started kind of getting back into it, and we put out a record in March, um, and then I have a record coming out again with Sakuraba, and it's coming out on a label out of Fresno called For E and A, and it's a drum. Apparently, it's a drum pattern, and
Oh,
it's
really?
yeah, it's the that's what the label's named after, and it's a guy named Jason Merle who is just killing. I'm sure in your box you have a Jason Merle track
Right.
because He's a great remixer. He's probably one of my favorites right now. Just nice, deep West Coast Jack and House. Like I don't
Nice.
know how, yeah. And so, super nice guy. And I sent it over to him, and he liked it, and should be out in like January with a couple of remixes, which I'm
Very
not
cool.
allowed to say who's doing them
I'm
yet.
sure it's gonna be dope.
I hope so.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm kind of like a little OCD about this Sakuraba guy because I'm a big MMA fan. And
Yes.
is that what he named himself after?
No, yes, he did.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, and he, if you go on Bandcamp, you'll see he does more kind of. I want to keep him as a anomaly because he is a pretty big Houston musician, and he kind of went into this like
Really? Uh oh.
yeah, he
Uh
went in
oh.
he went into this. You can Google. I'm sure
I'm gonna
you'll
Google
find
him.
out. You'll see it. Yeah. Gracie would know who it is.
I have a
Uh,
feeling I know who it is actually.
oh, yeah.
Yeah. There's a
And
very small community of people who are like MMA nerds as well as
he's not in
electronic music.
MMA.
Oh, really?
No, 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 no. He
Oh,
just
it's
wanted
interesting.
something weird. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And
Sakuraba
he,
was known as the
yeah.
Gracie killer, right? Like
Right.
he was the guy who would fight all the Gracie family, and he would always beat them, and was kind of elusive. Not
Uh,
until he got like really old did any of the Gracies start beating him.
beating him. I didn't see him, and I was big into MMA for a little bit.
Yeah,
Like whenever they were doing, what was that show that
the
where
Ultimate
was it?
Fighter.
Ultimate Fight. Freaking loved it. I couldn't, the first one to like, the first 5 seasons. I absolutely, and got really into it.
Honestly, that's actually how I managed to get Julieta to support my crazy MMA life. Is that she just was obsessed. She became
Really?
so obsessed with that show. She'd be like, "Okay, it's time." Like I'd get home
Right.
and we got to watch it. And so, you know.
Yeah.
So what's your creative process look like? How does that work for you?
In producing or
Yeah, in
in,
producing, primarily, I would say. I mean, you could talk a little bit about DJing as well, but
right.
for instance, I get up like at 5 in the morning and I do my creative stuff because it's the
Uh-huh.
only time I really like all of this that I'm doing right now is probably just gonna get shoved over to tomorrow morning, and then I start
Right.
processing everything.
Right.
It's just that's when I feel the most creative and the most
Really?
like I'm fresh. You know,
In the morning, yeah.
yeah. Some people like late at night.
Yeah, the production, I have a little bit of a learning curve. So I'm learning to kind of I'm learning Ableton, and I just haven't had time because to really just kind of sit. I've had a couple of hours, but I'm learning it slowly. And so it's very difficult to, kind of, I want to bring it from brain to computer, right? To get what it is that I want. And I think that's kind of my process right now. I've never been one to want to put out like 10 records a year. Like I want to put out like two or three, or one a quarter really.
Right.
And so that's kind of that. It's what I get inspired when I go to the gym. I like to listen to mixes of DJs that I really admire and look up to, kind of, and get kind of inspiration in that. And then, so that's production, and I like kind of bending genres, and like that last record, the 1001 Geckos, I wanted a little bit harder, but I still wanted kind of the deep elements, but I still wanted some techno, and I wanted, it to still have a little funkiness to it, what, but still have, a blend of elements. Um, so that's kind of how I like to produce. With DJing, to me, that's what I really enjoy doing. I really love DJing. I love going through records or going through tracks and kind of picking out tracks and telling a story. And so what I actually, I actually start, putting a set together a month and a half ahead of a gig because I want to make sure that no matter what track I play, it's going to do what I want it to do, right? And so I don't do a particular order. I don't have any order, but it's got to have kind of a feel to it. And I'll kind of mess around with it for a little bit and then add little tracks or take away tracks and that's the advantage of record boxes. You can just kind of like
Just boop.
hop on the computer.
Yep.
Yeah,
Just
it's
boop it out.
nice.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's I'm pretty for me, I've always said that I'm not the best technical mixer, but I sure as hell can program. And that's the one thing that I take pride in is being able to program a set to where I'm taking you on this journey. And it might get a little darker, it might get a little funkier, it might but that's the reciprocity that I'm talking about. So
I do the same thing actually.
yeah.
When I'm putting together a set, I used to do this. Actually, Nimbus talks about doing it a lot, where he categorizes his music
Yeah, I do
and
too.
different feels, and
Hmm.
then he uses Serato a lot, so he's kind of
Right.
like got his crate set up. But
Hmm.
for me, I just like to make one box, one crate, right, and just
Okay.
start throwing tracks in that have
Uh,
that kind of feel, like what you're talking about,
oh, cool.
and then also like I really feel like DJs are the last. I mean, most DJs. I don't.
Uh-huh.
I'd say a lot of DJs now are streaming their
Right.
music
Oh,
into
yeah.
mixes, which is kind of crazy.
Oh, that's
I have
cool.
a streaming service that I could use for, like, if I ever do like a corporate gig or something where I don't
Sure.
want to own the music or have it on a hard
Right.
drive. But I'll do that. I'll throw all this music together, and then I'll listen to it and I'll play it. And
Hmm.
I practice a lot.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
Probably, yeah. I
I love
just,
practicing. I
yeah.
actually sometimes like practicing more than playing in front of people
You
because
know
then
the
you can just play what you want to play and not worry
Yeah,
about the crowd.
exactly. Sometimes I'll get into the mixing things in key.
Right.
Other times I'll just think about things in terms of composition, like if I want to create this environment, all
Yeah.
kinds of stuff, and just kind of try and work that out in my sets as well.
Yeah.
And it really helps me expand and, like, uh there's nothing like playing live, though. Like,
Oh,
all
no.
bets are off when you're playing live, because
Yeah.
you have the perfect environment here, right?
Yeah.
It's like tuned exactly the way you want it to sound.
Yeah.
And then when you get to the club, it's like, what the hell? There's no, like,
Right.
mid level. Where's the mid?
Right.
It's all like
Yeah.
highs and bass. And
Yeah.
you're like, wow, okay, okay. So I really like to think a little bit deeper into, like,
Yeah.
what the sound is, and then I'll go, okay,
Oh,
I don't think I could
oh,
play a
I
lot of
see.
the melodic stuff because it'll get
Right.
lost in the mud that's
Sure.
here right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. How do you do you put your tracks into categories and subcategories or like do you just have tracks?
I literally will make, like, so I do a radio show, like a little self-published radio show. Shout out to all three
Right.
of my listeners. But
I've
when I
checked it out. It's on Mixcloud. I check it
yeah,
out every once in a while. Yeah.
yeah. So I don't do any programming on that. All I do is just buy new music, buy. And we're one of the few that still do that, I think. Like, nobody else really buys music anymore. There's not a lot of
Right.
people who are buying, like,
Oh,
MP3s or buying, wave files anymore, except for, I feel, DJs. I think a lot of
right.
people
I
just
buy.
stream their
Yeah.
music, right?
Yeah. No, I buy. Yeah. I got
Yeah, but I'll buy a bunch of music from TrackSource. I love Bandcamp
it.
because Bandcamp is a place where you'll
Yeah.
find, like people's trying Shazam your stuff, and you're like,
Gems.
I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you. Now,
Right.
I
Yeah.
usually end up
Yeah.
telling people what it is. I'll just say, go find my
Yeah.
Bandcamp, and if you look on my
Right.
page, like, see what I bought, you'll see it there. Um,
Right.
but yeah, I'll buy a bunch of that stuff, and then I'll put it in one folder that's called Shakedown Radio episode 20, right? Which I'm working
Okay.
on right now. But if I
Oh,
do a
nice.
mix, like I have like I have two mixes that I just put out. One that's coming
Uh-huh.
out on uh, Deeper Shades of House, and then I
What?
called
On
that
what?
Breathe Life, and then
Uh-huh.
yeah, with Lars Behrenroth,
Oh,
and then I have another one that I just put out called Summer's End, and Summer's End
okay.
was
Yeah, yeah,
like
I saw that. Yeah.
yeah, Summer's End was a process that took me like you it took me about a month and a half to kind of
Yeah.
compose because it was like I had to have the perfect first song. I had to have the perfect second song that fit into that
Yeah.
first song, and
Yeah.
so on and so forth. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
and
Yeah.
I don't think as DJs you really don't have to do all that, but like I do.
Yeah.
I like to do that because I
It
was
sets the
raised
tone.
I tell people I was raised by I was encouraged by Tattoo Dan to do this
Huh.
stuff. But the
Oh, cool.
DJs that brought me up were guys that I would watch like techno DJs who would do these
Uh-huh.
like incredible tricks and do
Right.
these like long format mixes that I just
Yeah. Lots of
loved.
overlaying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tim
And
was and Andre were amazing at that. And same with
exactly.
Anderson. Yeah.
So even though my music is like a lot more melodic and a ton of
Mhm.
instrumentation, and sometimes even if it's in the same key, like they're going 153 instead of one. So like
Right.
they're when they play inside the key, it's a little bit different. But like I
Sure.
listen to all that and see how it kind of fits,
Right.
and if it doesn't fit, it just doesn't fit, and I feel kind of bummed out.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I want people to hear
Yeah.
that. And then also there's a message in my music, like when people
Yeah.
are singing, there's words in there, so I want people to like I want people one day to go back to my mixes and go, what the fuck, dude, I can't believe
Yeah.
he was saying something to us the whole time, and
The whole time. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I'm not gonna put a vocal track on there that I don't like the vocals. I don't
Hmm.
like what they're I would never do that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I just like if you're saying something, if I'm playing something, it's gonna be like I'm gonna like the vocals,
Yeah.
like what they're saying, because it represents us, right? It represents me. So
Yeah.
yeah, I what I do in record boxes, I put everything into into categories. So it'll be house, vocal house, tech vocal, deep techno, deep house, and kind of go like that. So I know, you know, and then I try to learn the song so that I know when to put it, because I always have like points of like, okay, I want to go to this song eventually, and how am I going to get there? Like I want to build it because I like building and then bring it down, building it because if you're just straight bangers, you're not telling us like,
Yeah.
so you need the foreplay is what I call it. Have
Yeah.
to have foreplay. So,
100%.
yeah.
What would you give as advice to up and coming or younger DJs who are aspiring either to become artists or DJs? What kind of advice would you give them?
Follow your passion, like follow what you truly truly believe in, and it's gonna change. You're gonna because you know don't be afraid of being influenced, but also have kind of like what you know what it is that you like and what it is that you don't like, and it's okay. Again, art and music is very subjective, so you know you know be open to different genres, be open to listening, be open to, oh, that's cool, or those elements are cool, but also trust trust your taste. Don't be afraid of saying, yeah, I like weird abstract, and this is what feels good to me. um I think that's super super important to really kind of follow what it is that brings you happiness and gives you emotion, uh, whatever it is. And for God's sake, learn how to beat match.
What do you think
You know,
about this technology? Like, well, all the technology that has brought people quicker to becoming DJs, right? I
Right.
will put the quotation part.
Sure. Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Here's my thing. I don't mind if you're auto syncing. I really don't. If you're running three turntables effects and you're doing things on the fly. I was God, I was pissed. I was at a show and I saw Wally Lopez, who was one of my favorite producers, you know, in 2000s, and he was using Tractor, and he was just dumping, like he would just put, and it automatically mixed for you. All he had to do was move the crossfader. I'm like, are you kidding? He's like, I've been mixing for so long, I know how to mix. I'm like, yeah, but like, you're not. If you have two, like four
Yeah.
going at one time, or you're just quick mixing and you're just on the fly, like, yeah, I'm cool with that. And you're sampling, I'm all about that because you're being creative and the mixing isn't at the forefront of, like, you're telling a story in a different way, right? And so there's a creativeness to that. I'm good with that if you're going to auto sync. But if you're auto syncing just two turntable or two CDJs, like, that's just freaking lazy.
Yeah, I think if you're just using the technology to be mediocre, like what's the
Yeah.
point?
Yeah.
If you're using the technology to DJ the same set as somebody else you heard that you liked their
Yeah.
set, what's the point?
But
You're
there's no
not.
passion in that, right?
Yeah,
That's not coming from your heart. That's not coming from the soul.
no. I think
You're
if
in
you,
the wrong business.
I am definitely on board with you when it comes to technology. If you want to use it to blow people's minds by
Yeah.
doing something live on the fly,
Yeah.
doing something creative, hell yeah, do it.
Yeah.
If everything's synced at once and, you got four tracks working, you're playing a keyboard or something, or,
Yeah.
bringing
Right.
in a sample that's like driving people crazy, do
Yeah.
it, man.
Yeah. Because you're working it. I mean, you're working to provide a vibe. But I
Yeah.
think, to me, I think it's also a respect to the craft, to
Yeah.
learn the basics. At first I was like, well, learn how to play on turntables, but you know what? That's just not going to happen. Records are
Mhm.
expensive now, but learning how to beat match, I think that just kind of gives respect you know, to kind of the people that started it all.
Also, to go back to your um, comment about, playing weird stuff, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Play
Yeah.
something that is like weird,
Yeah.
something that it
Off.
represents you, something
Yeah.
that is um, just off and maybe
Yeah.
even off-putting. Just play
Yeah.
it, be
Oh,
you.
yeah, yeah.
And if you don't
Yeah.
have a tribe for it, make one.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
build it
It,
around it. You know.
yeah. And that's the thing. Houston, it's very, I can't believe we don't have as many avenues for how big it is and how multicultural it is. And that's, one thing that I appreciate about you guys and Greg and, Melodic and, Miss Melodic, and, uh, they're trying to make their their tribe, right? And they're pushing. I mean, if you really think about it, there are only two real venues. There's the Flat and Bauhaus, and that's it. That's
Yeah.
bringing somewhat underground music
Right.
in in a city of 4 to 6 million people.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah,
Everything
and
else is an
it's
event.
always kind of been that way too, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
even back when we were first getting started. I
yeah,
mean, you were pretty well established by the time I first started,
right.
but I just remember like being the only guy playing like Screaming Diva,
Yeah, yeah,
garage, like just
yeah. I
really.
mean, yeah. Soul Daddies were doing
But
it.
besides the Soul Daddies and Vic Vegas and Mr. Bristol,
Bristol.
those guys
Yeah,
I call them my mentors because they were the
yeah,
guys. Even though Dan kind of ushered me into this thing,
yeah,
like they were the people that I looked up to because they were playing
yeah,
music that I
yeah.
didn't have access to or didn't know.
Yeah, Albert did too.
Yeah,
Biz did played a lot of like that funky, vocal house, and it was
definitely.
very diff at that time. I wasn't into a lot of vocals. I was more into kind of like the deeper West Coast house, a little
Right.
bit more of the kind of more of the Detroit style techno and like Chicago tech. I was really into Chicago techno.
Yeah.
So a little bit more on the darker side of things. But then I started getting into more vocals, and so because I was after Detroit, I decided that okay, I was because I was traveling a lot for DJing. Actually, it was pretty fun. And I was like, okay, I need to kind of. I was about to start my master's program in clinical social work, and so I wanted to find a residency that paid for my bills, but where I wasn't selling out.
Right.
So I got asked to play at the social on Thursdays and Saturdays. And there I was able to play how they wanted nothing but house, funk, and 80s. That's it. No commercial, no rap, no, and it was good. And then the guys from Red Door, which was a Midtown ultra lounge. They're like, what you're playing there is what we want here. And if anybody ever tells you to play rap or something commercial, you come get us. And I was at,
Right.
and by that time I was more into, you couldn't play 135 BPM techno at an ultra lounge. So I got more into like, vocal house and just house and a little bit more of the Chicago stuff and a little bit of the European stuff, but it was non-commercial, straight up just house, and it was great. And it was kind of nice to get that. Uh, that was a venue that consistently there was always house music.
Yeah.
Uh, but and you had club space, and you had, you know, uh, there are more options now. There's just not. There really isn't.
I think
It's a
house
shame.
music has had this underground house music has had this really great resurgence in Houston. There's guys like all
Yeah.
the guys that are a part of I-45, Nanigo,
Yeah.
Zuniga, Era, Malcolm
Yeah.
Bravo, the guys from
Yeah.
I'm gonna forget Malcolm Bravo's group name. I think it's Criollo something or other. Um,
Right. Well,
but
yeah, they're doing a lot of like Latin
Radio
or
Sofrito,
Afro-Cuban.
yeah,
Yeah, dude. That dude is there's a guy that he plays vinyl. What's his name? Juan? Or, but he's a kid and maybe 22 years old, and he's part of that I-45. I have one of their
yeah.
shirts. I'm like, I want one of your shirts. How much?
Yeah. And Housetown is
They're
still alive too, still
yeah,
still cranking out music. I mean,
yeah,
it's a very rich culture, man. Houston's underground electronic music scene and house music is very much alive. I remember,
yeah.
in kind of an early stage, I think I was working at Sears. That's how long ago it was. And
Yes.
and some lady came up to me and she's like, she's talking with her friend, and she's like, I wish they had house music in this city. And I was like,
What?
what? I was like, you don't know there's house. It's house in Houston. And she was like,
Right.
oh, it's not real house though. We're from Chicago. I'm like,
Oh,
you better shut the fuck
go.
up. Like it's real house in Houston. And we had
Right.
this great conversation, and I told her all
Yeah.
the places to go. And but yeah, I mean, it happens because Houston is so massive. Somebody could land in a place like Humble, let's say, from
Right.
Detroit, you know,
Right.
and they used to watch Eddie Flash and Folks, all the
Right.
guys, Juan Atkins, you know,
Sure.
uh, Stacy Pullen, all those guys, and they could be like, "Oh man, it's not, it's nothing like that
There's
here."
nothing in Houston.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
No,
they're
yeah.
all the way
And
in
it's
Humble, right?
humble, right. Yeah. And Houston's a very weird, it's so spread out. I, you know,
We're a lot more connected than we were in 2000 and in the
yeah.
late 90s. We're a lot more
Yeah.
connected now through the internet. So you're getting a lot more of
Sure.
those people that are coming out.
Yeah. No, which is great.
Yeah.
I wish there were more events. I don't, I guess what I'm saying is there isn't, you've got the every month events, but there isn't a place except for the Flat or Bauhaus that
Yeah.
you know that you can go and you're going to hear house music, house or
Yep.
techno,
That's
right?
valid.
Where and that sucks. And I don't know. That's always been kind of an issue in Houston. It just always has, and
You know,
I don't know.
hip hop and commercial music is king when it comes to
Yeah,
the business of dance clubs, right?
right. Yeah,
So we're
yeah, because
always
they
going to
bring
be
in,
relegated to
yeah,
doing something more independent and more
yeah,
like in the on the fringe. And I'm completely
right.
fine with that, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's called pop for a reason. Popular.
Yeah. And it's a
Well,
yeah,
popular
exactly.
means everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's going to bring you. You don't open a business hoping to fail.
yeah, I just like
You
playing
know.
cool music, man. You know,
So do I. Yeah.
cool to me. You know, if it's cool to me
Yeah.
and other people, you know, are on board with it, I love that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. It
Y-
was. It's nice to see. When I saw you, and I think it was the first time that y'all were at uh, Kitty the
Ball
Ball
Kitty,
Kitty.
yeah.
Beautiful place. Like such a cool venue, and it was just the vibe that y'all provided was great. It was exactly what Houston needs. It's a great space.
It's been a
It's a
long time
great
since
place.
we've had a place where, at the end of the night, the staff
Yeah,
is like, "Yo,
that's cool.
that was
Yeah,
dope. You know, that was
nice.
fun."
Yeah, yeah,
You know, because you know, so many times you go to these like you try and force a fit, right? We've done it a million
yeah,
times. Like try and force a fit.
yeah,
We go to a popular nightclub and we do
yeah.
cool underground something. And at the end of the night, they're like, "Yeah, no, you know, like, yeah, we were,
Uh,
yeah. Are you guys gonna do some hip hop or something a little bit later or
oh,
anything?" And I
yeah,
grew up on hip hop, man. I'm a hip hop
yeah, no,
diehard
yeah,
hip hop fan,
right.
but that's not the time. You know,
No,
we have an artist that we bring in from like you know somewhere, Chicago, L.A., wherever, and like
right.
we've
Yeah.
got this great artist. And, yeah, could you play
Is he going to play
some
something with lyrics or
a
something
little
that I can dance to?
21 Savage or you know?
Sure.
So why don't you tell everybody how to find you? Websites, internets. What do you got?
So I put out every quarter. I try to put out a mix. And I am one of those people where I don't believe in hour mixes. So I do, about a 2.5 hour mix.
Nice.
So if you go to SoundCloud, Ethan Klein, just put in Ethan Klein Houston, and it's probably got about 6 or 7 mixes. Uh, and that's probably the best way to kind of hear my stuff. I have some of my original stuff on there as well. I'm also, Spotify, Beatport, Bandcamp. Um, what else? Just put in Ethan Klein Houston, not to be confused with that Ethan Klein, the dumbass podcaster who's a total douchebag. Ugh, I get that crap all the time.
Oh
Ay,
man,
ay.
I wasn't gonna bring it up. You brought it up.
No, it's like, so if you Google me, please put in Ethan Klein Houston. Otherwise, you're going to get a bunch of stuff from this. I forget. He's just a dumbass. I
Yeah,
can't stand him.
yeah.
So
He's ruining your
SoundCloud,
name.
he's ruining my name, and I was around before him. So, but yeah, SoundCloud's the best way to kind of check out my music, and obviously Spotify if you're looking for my production, what's it, my record releases.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Find
yeah,
you on Track Source also.
track source, yeah, all
Yeah.
of it, all platforms. So
Awesome.
yeah,
Well, thanks for joining me today. It's been awesome. We always have great
absolutely.
conversations.
Yeah, we
I'm
do.
probably gonna have to edit this down a little bit.
No problem. No problem. It's a real pleasure.
Any final shout outs?
Oh, don't put me. Yeah. Come out. It's gonna be a fun night.
Shout
I
out to the
look forward to
wifey.
meeting you. Shout out to the wifey, Morgan, who's
Sh-
very, very patient.
Shout out to Scooby Doo crew. Shout out
Yeah.
to all the kids.
Cello.
Yeah.
Housetown Records, you know, for A&E, you know, Jason Merle, thank you for everything. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Awesome.
So, and definitely the flat. I have to say the flat really kind of lets me play a lot there often.
Yeah, man.
And I love playing there. Malcolm and Andre, DJ San, you know, they've definitely shout outs to them because I play there once a quarter and they're like, anytime you want to play, you can play,
Yeah.
you know, which is awesome.
Shout out to the OG, triple OG, DJ
Yeah,
Sun, Andre
yeah,
Sampson.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. You have a wonderful weekend and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Yes, sir.
All right, brother.